Let's talk about resistance and alternatives to hyperimperialism.
I mean, nothing happens in a straight line. I wish history advanced in a straight line. We always say history goes in zigs and zags. In fact, it's a spiral sometimes. You get dizzy. I mean, here we go again. Interesting group of fellows have taken Damascus. Here we go again. Haven't we seen this story? That kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, the United States. I mean, I can't follow. It's so painful. Here we go again. Another school, another kid goes in with a gun, shoots people. It's not true. What people say, guns don't kill, people do. The guns kill. I mean, if the kid went in there with a knife, for instance, it would be much harder to kill people. You can get pinned down. Guns kill. They are dangerous. Civilians should not be roaming around with guns in public like that. I know it's an unpopular statement in some countries, but for God's sake, I mean, be careful, people. History spins out of control, and I keep thinking, this can't have happened again. I just saw that news, Michigan. Yeah, I think it's Michigan. I thought, oh wait, didn't I see that last week or the week before? Oh, there's another black man killed in the United States by the police. Didn't I see that before? History spins out of control. It's dizzying, it's frustrating, annoying, heartbreaking. Yeah, but there are always cracks and breaks, and it's very important for us, for you guys, for us, collectively, to track the breaks, the cracks, the disassociation, and so on. I found very interesting that when Russia entered Ukraine, many countries around the world, in Latin America, Asia, but particularly Namibia, was a very key example. Namibia refused to condemn the Russians. The Namibian Prime Minister, exactly my age, we are the same generation. She was at the Munich Security Conference. She was attacked by a German man who said to her, you should condemn Russia, double standards and so on, he's saying to her. And she said, listen, why should I condemn Russia? It's your war. It's a European war. Plus, we have many conflicts in Africa. You are not asked to take a position. And thirdly, the Soviet Union is the country that defended us when we were the Southwest African People's Organization fighting against apartheid. You guys didn't defend us. You backed the apartheid forces. Well, she went back home. The president then sent out a tweet to Germany saying, how dare Germany lecture us on genocide? This was after Israel started its bombing. How dare Germany? You came to Southwest Africa before it was Namibia, and you conducted the genocide in 1906 of the Herero and Nama people. You almost wiped out these two populations in Southwest Africa. Germany did this, 40 years before the Holocaust. And he says, don't lecture us. This is the new mood. What gives Namibia the strength to talk like that? To some extent, it's that they don't rely 100% on the International Monetary Fund anymore. They are not reliant on the US Treasury Department. They need cash. They go to China. They go to India. They go to Indonesia. They go elsewhere. They are not reliant on the United States and its institutions. They go to the BRICS Bank. There's a lot of institutions available to Namibia. So that frees them up a lot. And I want to say, last month in November of 2024, there was a important gathering in Niamey in Niger of solidarity with the new governments in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, who have formed the Alliance of Sahel States. These are three countries which have had 5 military coups. The principal framework of these governments is France dégage or dégage, France get out. But in fact, underneath that are mass political protests in Niger led by women who gathered around the bases yelling, France, go away. It is these mass protests that push the military to overthrow the terrible governments before them and to start an anti-imperialist political project on the African soil. In my opinion, guys, this is the most important indicator of the new mood, and it requires our solidarity. More and more people need to know about what's happening in the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States. Why? Because the West is trying to say, well, they're military dictatorships, they are coups, these are not actually governments, and so on and so forth. I have a lot I can say about Mali in particular because I'd interviewed Alpha Omar Konare, who had been the president in the 1990s, and I remember what happened to him. But I don't want to go into too much detail. All I want to really say and emphasize is that it is ridiculous to say that, oh, these are military coups, therefore people on the left shouldn't support them. In that case, my friends, we should not support our hero, Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara came to power in 1983 in a military coup. I was a young man at the time. I had a picture of him up in my college because Thomas Sankara was my hero. I followed him on a regular basis, and I was heartsick when he was couped and killed in 1987, only 4 years later. We have to galvanize an international movement to support the alliance of Sahel states. They must not be overthrown. Ibrahim Traore must not be assassinated. Their lives are at stake. These people are patriots. The government in Senegal, led by former tax collectors, also a progressive government, not a radical government, needs our support. This is the new mood. Now, even the government of Chad has told the French, get your troops out. We have to support the government of Chad, even though it's nothing near a progressive government. There is a lot happening on the African continent, in my opinion, that deserves immediate support. The AES project is the most radical project taking place now in the global south. It is absolutely essential that it's up there on our list with Cuba solidarity and so on. This is not to be reduced to military coups. These are popular movements, ordinary people who have struggled and suffered with great poverty. Again, even though they are rich countries. I mean, Niger has some of the world's best uranium, which the French have been stealing to power their uranium reactors, paying nothing. The town of Arlit in northern Niger is garrisoned by the French Foreign Legion and various other French military detachments. I tried to go to Arlit, drive there. It's very difficult to enter the town. I have a photograph of the entry point. Why? Because they treat it as their property. They don't want anybody in there. They just take the uranium, give, pennies on the dollar, as they say, for the uranium. This is outrageous. These countries must be allowed their sovereignty. And that's the final thing I want to say. The new mood in the South is around the concept sovereignty. It's not more radical than that. But I'll say to you that if a country is able to establish its sovereignty, and if it is interested in the well-being of its people, the road to sovereignty and well-being, call it whatever you will, it's going to look like socialism.
So I was wondering if you have any advice to people in anti-imperialist or so-called revolutionary organizations based in the West on how they can contribute to supporting this new mood that you've talked about, and more generally, the anti-imperialist fights in the global South.
Sometimes when I'm bored, I just go to social media and just check, what are some of the debates, and I find that often I'm attacked by terms I just find so juvenile: campist, genocide denier, blah blah blah. This comes from people who, in my opinion, don't want to win. See, I'm in politics and in transformation of society movements to win. I'm not here to be a permanent opposition. We want to take power where we are. We want to change society, And once you take power, you're filled with compromises, problems, the zigzags and dialectics of building a new world. You'll make a lot of errors. You don't have enough people, who have a correct consciousness, in a sense, who have understood exactly what direction you're going to go in. I mean, it's chaos. Yeah. If you actually leave the metropolitan areas of the North and travel to where people are really trying to build a revolution, you will discover lots of people struggling. It's easy to condemn them, but you're condemning them from a position of futility. Like you're saying, we are never going to contest state power in France. We are okay being a purist opposition. We want to attack everybody. But I don't want that, because, let's take the country of Niger again. Yeah. Abdul Rahman, the leader now in Niger, he can't afford to say, let's just be an opposition. There are people who are dying of hunger. You've got power. You've got to solve these compelling problems, and to do that, you're going to have to compromise. Maybe you sell some resources to somebody, to get food and things to take care of immediate problems. Then you say, oh my God, look at them. They are selling their resources. Obviously, they are selling their resources. They have to deal with immediate problems faced by people, starvation and so on. But they want to build a project eventually. So people who don't want to win, in my opinion, and this is the argument I say is not sectarian. When somebody says to me, why do you support the Chinese government? Well, look, I'm not supporting the Chinese government. I support the Chinese revolution. It has, after all, eradicated absolute poverty. What other country has done that? I was in Shanghai recently, walked through the streets of Shanghai, no homeless people, okay? During the September UN week, I was in New York City. It was horrifying, okay? I was in Midtown Manhattan. It is horrifying. It's mostly people of color on the street. I was walking down 30 some street. There was a man walking towards me, middle of the day, people walking right by him without wearing any pants. That is not a civilization. That is not a society. That is brutality. To allow a human being to live a life where dignity is compromised, that's not a civilization, friends. I don't know what that is. It's decadent, whatever. Paris, so many homeless people in Paris. It's a hideous city to walk through. I mean, what city of lovers? Which couple wants to walk around surrounded by people in great despair? You want that, you go. In fact, today to a Chinese city where there is no homelessness because absolute poverty has been eradicated. But when I say that, people will say, well, you're bought and paid by the Chinese government. No, I'm not. I'm not bought and paid by anybody. That's what I've seen. Go and see it for yourself if you want to. They had the courage to win in 1949, and then they've struggled to come where they are. They have actually achieved something, and that's important. You gotta, Lenin said something interesting. Lenin said, if you're too afraid to fail, you'll do nothing. If you're too afraid to fail, you'll do nothing. Of course, people who try to win, to change history are going to fail. Of course, there'll be millions of mistakes. But if you just point the mistakes, then you demoralize yourself and you say, okay, then let's not try. And a lot of politics in the global north is a politics of, in my opinion, from the standpoint of we don't want to win. We just want to be a permanent critic forever. And therefore, they sit back in Paris or in London and they look at what's happening in the Sahel and say, well, these guys are authoritarian. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to fail and so on. And maybe they will fail, but at least they tried. That's better than you. They tried to make history. All you're doing is writing tweets.
There's always this criticism of like, oh, well, if you decide that you want to do this, but, all of these critiques to make you say, oh, well, okay, fine. It's not perfect right now, so I can't do it, right? The constant critique and trying to make you fit within the ideas that they think you should be creating a nation and building a nation from is critiqued. So then they say, okay, well, no, that's not really good. Try again. So you constantly stay, like you're saying, not winning, stay in this position of not doing anything because there's contradictions or because, there's a possibility of failure.
I mean, what is failure other than the fact that you made an attempt to do something good? I salute those who fail. They are, to me, more impressive than those who did nothing. And we can make a list of people, who failed. Let me ask you, let's go down the list. Did W.E.B. Du Bois fail? He didn't make a revolution in the United States. He didn't even make a revolution in Ghana when he went there. But W.E.B. Du Bois tried everything, and he left behind a body of work that is noble, that is important, that is to be revered. I look at a figure like E.M.S. Namboodiripad from India. Again, he was the first communist chief minister to win an election in a bourgeois democracy in Kerala in 1957. He was then effectively couped in 1959, but he came back to win again. Did he fail? He didn't achieve all his objectives, but today Kerala is one of the most interesting parts of the world. There are more cooperatives in Kerala than anywhere else that you'll see. There is a lively public engagement and debate. During the pandemic, the chief minister of Kerala, communist, Pinarayi Vijayan, was, he heard the phrase social distancing. Remember that? Physical distancing. Remember that phrase? He said, I reject this phrase. He said, yes, we can allow for distancing, but we have to have social cohesion. People need to go door to door to make sure elders are okay. We have to make sure that people who are ill and infirm get their medicines. So hundreds of youth, communist youth in Trivandrum, the capital, went door to door with clipboards, banging on the door saying, do you need medicines? Oh, you need on Friday? Okay, we'll get it and deliver it to you and blah, blah, blah. They did this during the entirety of the lockdown. At the end of the lockdown, there was a municipal election. And a young woman, 21-year-old woman, Arya Rajendran, who was one of these young women who went door to door, was elected the mayor of the capital city of Kerala, 21 years old. Why? She proved herself on the ground, building society. Because what's important is not building individualism. It's building society. When I tell this story to people in the United States in particular, and I ask them, did the state or anybody knock on your door and ask you how you're doing during the pandemic? People looking at me, are you crazy? Nobody knocked on my door. But imagine if you are an elderly person or a person, who doesn't have the means to order delivery, which is expensive. And you say, look, I need to pick up my medicines. I can't get there. And somebody says, don't worry. We'll organize it. Just give us the payment for the mail. Or you order the medicine, we pick it, deliver it for free. Why? Because we're bloody human beings, man. And that's the objective of life, to behave like a human being, not to behave like an individual.
If you don't mind, in closing, tell the people why it's important to support political prisoners here in the U.S. and abroad, if that's okay.
This is an absolute important thing to talk about. Mumia Abu Jamal has been a friend of mine for a very long time. I often say, Kalonji, that Mumia Abu Jamal is the freest man in America. He has the freest brain. There are people who are not incarcerated, whose brains are in prison. And there's Mumia Abu Jamal, who's in prison, but his brain is free. He is, that in that sense, the freest man in the country. And it is an outrage that, every year when a presidential term ends, the US president effectively pardons actual criminals and doesn't pardon any political prisoners. Of course, Mumia Abu Jamal, top of my list, Leonard Peltier. The list is so long that even on an hour show, we couldn't start to scratch the surface of it. It is a disgrace. The United States is running a television program after television program about the prisons in Syria and people being released from them. What about the Gulag archipelago in the United States, in which there are people being held prisoner, in a sense, for life? What about them? When will their reckoning come? I hope sooner than later, if we have the guts to take power.